Brain implants are here. Is it the next advancement in human civilization, or is it the priming people for the potential mark of the beast?
What happens if someone ultimately does get a Neuralink installed? What will take place?
It basically implanted in your skull. Put the Neuralink device in there, and you wouldn't even know that somebody has it. And then...
But there's been some massive pushback, especially in the Instagram post, with verified brands like Champ saying, absolutely not. Or Slim Jim saying, let's see if he tries it. And all this ruckus and hoopla is because Neuralink, Elon Musk's company, announced that they are starting their first human trials.
Elon Musk's brain implant startup, Neuralink, is recruiting patients for a clinical trial.
After 7 years of rigorous research and development, Neuralink has been approved by the FDA for its first human clinical trial.
That's right. They're about to put these Neuralink brain chips into people's skull. So in a moment, we're going to flash back to when Joe Rogan had Elon Musk on his podcast and the possible spooky spiritual implications of something like Neuralink. But first, let's look at the tweets from Elon and some of the news coverage around this. This is what he tweeted today. He said the first human patient will soon receive a Neuralink device. This ultimately has the potential to restore full body movement. In the long term, Neuralink hopes to play a role in AI risk reduction by improving human to AI and human to human bandwidth by several orders of magnitude. Imagine if Stephen Hawking had this. Stephen Hawking, the guy who made an entire career out of mocking God. So Neuralink hopes to play a role in AI risk reduction by improving human to AI. He wants to make humans more like AI. And there's a link there. We're excited to announce the recruitment is open for our first in-human clinical trial. If you have quadrilegio due to cervical spinal cord injury, you may qualify. Okay, so this is for folks they're starting with who have spinal cord injuries. Okay, that is apparently who they're starting with. Now, the combination of human and AI to compete with AI is a bit much, right? Because I could see this going left very fast. Whoever, just say this works. Just say this works. Whoever has the most resources can not just have all the information in the world on their phone, but now they can have the tacit knowledge implemented in their brain through a Neuralink chip. I want to be a great piano player, and so Neuralink just does a download, and I could play tacitly on a piano. Or your freaking brain gets hacked. I don't know. That's where my brain goes. But then my brain also, and we're going to get into the people who participate in these trials in a moment. But first, my brain goes to this. Hello, Revelation 13, 16 through 18. It also forced all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hands or on their foreheads, so that they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let the person who has insight calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. That number is 666. Listen, I love the partial preterist position. I love my post-mill family. I like that position. I want that to be true. But that position views that a lot of revelation has already happened, and Nero is the 666. I cannot make a concerted, knowledgeable connection to what in history has people taking a mark on their foreheads or on their arm to have to buy and sell. I don't know when this ever happened in history. If you are a post-millennial, if you're a partial preterist, enlighten me, okay? But this seems super sus. So when you got folks that are getting chips implanted in their brain for the sake of progress, I think it's very alarming, to say the least, okay? That's pretty spooky. And to be fair to Elon, in a moment, we'll look at some ways that it could be potentially beneficial to people and why some people may really consider getting it. But first, let's get into this spiritual implications of the Neuralink and what Joe Rogan says about it. That makes him both concerned and excited about it. Check this out.
If someone ultimately does get a Neuralink installed, what will take place?
It basically implanted in your skull. So, but it would be flush with your skull. So you basically take out a chunk of skull, put the Neuralink device in there. You put the electrode, you'd insert the electrode threads very carefully into the brain, stitch it up, and you wouldn't even know that somebody has it.
the hole would be small. How big would the hole be that you have to drill and then replace with this piece?
It's about 1 inch in diameter. Yeah, and you replace that, say, 1 inch diameter piece of skull with this Neuralink device. And that has a battery and a Bluetooth and an inductive charger. So the electrodes are very carefully inserted with a robot that we developed. It's very carefully putting in the electrodes and avoiding any veins or arteries. So it doesn't create trauma.
So through this 1 inch diameter device, electrodes be inserted and they will find their way.
Like tiny wires, basically.
Tiny wires.
Tiny wires.
And they'll find their way to specific areas of the brain to stimulate?
No, you literally put them where they're supposed to go.
Once you enjoy the Dr. Manhattan lifestyle, once you become a god, seems very, very unlikely you're going to want to go back to being stupid again. I mean, you literally could fundamentally change the way human beings interface with each other.
Yes.
Yes.
You wouldn't need to talk.
I'm so scared of that, but so excited about it at the same time. Is that weird?
Okay, so man's obsession to want to be like God seems to go all the way back to the curse in the garden, where the serpent tells Eve that she could be like God. That man's obsession to want to be godlike, I think, is at the crux of our issue. And I don't mean be like God as in be a Christian, be a follower of Jesus, be like Jesus. I mean want to possess the attributes of divinity. In a moment, we're going to look at a brain expert saying how the technology within Neuralink is actually not new. It's been around for decades, and it possibly has been used to control people's minds by the government. Okay, but before we get into that, let's be fair and charitable to Elon and look at some of the possible pros of the Neuralink and why some Christians may even consider getting it. Check this out.
And so that it can interface basically anywhere in your brain. So it could be something that helps cure, say, eyesight, like returns your eyesight, even if you've like lost your optic nerve type of thing.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, pretty much anything that it could, in principle, fix almost anything that is wrong with the brain. Restore limb functionality. So if you've got interface into the motor cortex and then an implant that's, say, that's like a microcontroller in your muscle groups, you could then create a sort of a neural shunt that restores somebody who's a quadriplegic to full functionality.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So
maybe slightly better.
Slightly better?
Over time, yes.
So those are some of the possible benefit scenarios that people may want to get it. And listen, either way, it's pretty spooky. And speaking of spooky, check out what this brain expert had to say about Neuralink and how it's apparently similar technology that's been used by the government. And that's kind of why he wants Elon to succeed in this. Watch this.
What are your thoughts on Elon Musk's Neuralink?
This isn't new. It has a new name. It's getting recognition by the news. But honestly, it's been squelched. It's been covered up for many, many decades. I can track back at least synthetic telepathy or piping voices into people's head right around Kennedy's assassination, but about 1958 was the earliest target I could find. I hope Elon actually succeeds, because then this isn't imaginary stuff anymore. People will then see, wow, we can really connect brains together and make hyper-intelligence.
Now, this notion that humans only use a small percentage of their brain has been popularized in movies and TV shows like Limitless. And obviously, some people even say that if we could use the full function of our brain, we could do crazy things like telepathy and all kinds of other things that could have serious ramifications on humans. But if you didn't know, the limitless hypothesis has been debunked. People actually don't use a small percentage of their brain. They use a lot of their brain in order to do a lot of things that our bodies need to do. But let's look at some of the news coming out. Now, I don't know if this is verified, but it says here are the details on the grisly deaths of Elon Musk's Neuralink's monkeys. And then we're going to look at Elon Musk's response to this. Okay, Elon Musk denied claims that Neuralink's monkey test subjects died as a result of its brain implants, but Wired points out some documents that suggest otherwise. Okay, so he's denying this. Elon Musk said earlier this month that no monkeys has died as a result of the Neuralink implant, but an alarming new report from Wired seems to contradict Musk's statement. Public documents obtained by the Physician Committee for Responsible Medicine, PCRM, and seen by Wired indicate that Neuralink's macaque subjects were euthanized after suffering various complications, including bloody diarrhea, partial paralysis, and cerebral edema. Wired writes that the documents show a male monkey was euthanized in March 2020 after his cranial implant became loose with the, oh my gosh, could you imagine if the Neuralink gets loose in your brain? Yikes. With the necropsy revealing the failure of this implant can be considered purely mechanical and not exacerbated by infection. Okay, so this is purely mechanical issues. On Tuesday, Neuralink announced that it's starting in human trials for people with quadriplegia. The PCRM is a nonprofit that advocates against using live animals and testing that sued UC Davis to get the documents from the California National Primate Research Institute. Okay, so to be fair, this organization has an axe to grind with Neuralink because they're against all testing on live animals. So it's possible they have an agenda to grind. Let's see, this is another article. So this is Elon Musk denying it, right? 15 monkeys are more important than the hyperacceleration of all science and invention. Reminder that all professional ethics are a collection of maximally evil people. Okay, so they're saying this person is saying, listen, the greater good here, right, is this incredible breakthrough for society if this stuff actually works, right? And then Elon Musk responded, no monkey has died as a result of a Neuralink implant. First are early implants to minimize risk to healthy monkeys. We chose terminal monkeys close to death already. So he's saying they used monkeys that were close to death and experimented on them, and maybe that's going to be the justification for why they died. I don't know, but is it going to be one of those COVID things where they're like, did the monkeys die from Neuralink or did the monkeys die with Neuralink? I don't know, right? Listen, I don't know, but I think all of this is going to come down to a very, 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 very basic analysis of risk versus reward. I'm not lining up to do any sort of clinical trials, and I don't, unless you're like all the way without movement and you're really counting the risk and reward, and you're saying, listen, my life as it is now and the lack of mobility and the lack of whatever you're going through, that is worse than the possibility of losing your life or something like this happening to you, and I'm sure there are people like that, well, then I could understand someone in that situation. But generally speaking, I don't know if people are going to be lining up to do this. Furthermore, I'm always curious when people are doing this sort of stuff, like, why aren't the scientists and the Elon Musks himself, who can have superpowers potentially with Neuralink, why is he not lining up to be a test subject on this? Right? Like, I mean, I get it. Like, this is supposed to help people who don't have certain body function to do these sorts of things, right? And be able to get it back. But why is it like, hey, we need human clinical trials, right? Wouldn't the folks who have the most to gain from this and believe the most in it and are the most faithful to it, shouldn't they try it? I mean, just a thought, right? So if we just come out of tinfoil hat land for a moment and reel it back to the practical implications of what all this has on Christians, it can lead many people to get worried. And I would say rightfully so. Implanting chips into people's brains to solve diseases or make a superhuman elite class level of people is pretty spooky, and it could cause many of us to worry. But it reminds me of the words of Jesus in Matthew chapter 6. Jesus speaking to the multitudes in one of his most famous sermons, and he's addressing their worries about what they will eat and what they will wear and all the things that they have to deal with in this life. And he ultimately lands at this point. In verse 33, he says, "But seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added to you. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about its own things. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble." I am a huge advocate that as followers of Jesus, we need to focus on the areas we can control. We can't be worried about everything that's going on in the media, what agendas are being pushed, or the latest conspiracy. We need to worry about seeking God's kingdom and controlling the things we can control. And the things we can't control, we need to give up to God. And one of the best ways I'm able to relinquish control and give the things that only God can control is by growing in my discipline of prayer. One of the best ways I've been able to do that is by writing out my prayers in a prayer journal. And we put together the exact prompts that I've personally used for years to help me grow this spiritual discipline. One of the interesting things is when you write down your prayers, it actually stores them in a different part of your brain that help you recall them without needing the Neuralink. You could just write them down on a sheet of paper, which will help you remember them and see the tangible hand of God moving in your life in a real sense. Just today, I was writing out my prayers and I looked back a few pages ago and saw that God answered something very simple that I was just praying about like 2 weeks ago. So I'd encourage you, try writing down your prayers. It could be in your notes app, it could be in a blank journal, or if you want to get the exact one that I use and the customized prompts that I put together, go to blessgodprayer.shop. All right, I'll see you over there. Peace.